We're playing the long game. We're here for the long time as a company. We want to be here for a long time.
What ultimately compelled you to decide to found Flutterwave and start your own business?
The biggest one was really just seeing that payment is broken in Africa.
GB is unquestionably a leader in the African tech ecosystem, but until now, he's largely remained quiet.
We had a very long year last year as an organization. It's also been a year where we had to repeat so many things.
A lot of people in the ecosystem will want to hear from you about, the various allegations that were made against Flutterwave over the past year and a half.
I'm not sure I've ever spoken about this before in any forum.
Today's guest is Olugbenga Agboola, better known as the one and only GB, the co-founder and CEO of Flutterwave. It's been a trying last year or so for Flutterwave, with issues of fraud, allegations of impropriety inside the company, regulatory hurdles, and the general challenges of scaling a fintech in a tough operating environment. Yet through it all, Flutterwave has technology reach in 34 countries. They've continued to ship new products beyond their core payments technology, including their rebranded remittance product, Send app, and there are rumors swirling about the near-term timeline of their planned IPO. In this episode, we'll hear from GB about many of his recent lessons, his perspectives on product and expansion strategy, and we'll ask many of the questions we've been wanting to hear from him about, including the big one about Flutterwave's IPO. This episode of The Flip is sponsored by MFS Africa. MFS Africa is the leading digital payments gateway, which connects over 320 million mobile wallets across over 600 cross-border corridors and in over 30 countries across the African continent. Throughout this season, we'll hear from the MFS Africa team about their work to create a borderless world. In this episode, we're joined by MFS Africa's founder and residence for crypto, Gwera Kiwana, about the role of stablecoins in cross-border payments today.
Our mission at MFS Africa is to make borders matter less. We've spent the last few years building some really great solutions and infrastructure and rails that actually facilitate cross-border payments and make it really easy for our partners to plug in and have access to our 400 million plus mobile money wallets. Stablecoins really present a really interesting opportunity, and I think the killer use case for crypto adoption, especially in the global south, in places like Africa, to move money across borders without really needing too many intermediaries. So basically making cross-border payments cheaper, faster, but also without having to get our end users to have the heavy lift of understanding Web3 and crypto in general. Mass adoption of crypto is going to be driven by fintechs like ourselves, MFS Africa. We're using fintech in the front, so fintech really, really good at UX, so user experience, building things that people actually use and like and want and meeting customers where they are. But in the back end, powered by DeFi or crypto. And by definition, crypto is borderless. It is 24 hours. It is non-discriminatory about where you're from, your background. So it really is the next frontier for African innovation. We want people to use the technologies that they're used to, the methods of sending money they're used to, but bring that cost significantly down.
I think there's a lot of questions that I'm expecting to ask you and that a lot of people will want to hear from you about. The first one, of course, is when is Flutterwave going public? I don't know if you can give any insights into that.
Hey, Justin, great to be here. This has been a long time coming. I think we had this chat about this podcast, I think it was in 2021, right? Yeah, but here we are finally, after so many attempts to set up. Going public is a big deal, right? And it's a very important decision that I think a company like Flutterwave has to do, right? Obviously, for me as a person, as a CEO, for the team, for our customers, for investors, for our entire village, it's a massive, massive milestone, right? Obviously, the goal is to think through all possible options, all possible opportunities to get this done and make the right plan for it. So I would say right now we're trying to be IPO ready, which is basically, dotting our I's, crossing our T's as a company, right? Which is priority. And part of that, in my opinion, is obviously the focus, the extreme focus on building quality and great products to serve our customers efficiently as we grow and scale. So the short answer to that is we're working on it. It's work in progress. And a big piece of that is ensuring that all our T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and that's in progress.
Yeah. Well, like this interview, that was a long time coming. I think it's Good things happen to those who wait. So no rush, but I know everyone in the ecosystem is very excited for it. That's all. In all seriousness, the premise of this series is to speak to some of the most experienced founders and operators to share lessons from their experience for the benefit of the ecosystem. And I think it's a particularly interesting time to do it during this, so-called market downturn where a lot of people are reflective. I think the other question really that a lot of people in the ecosystem will want to hear from you about is, the various allegations that were made against Flutterwave over the past year and a half. And I don't want to relitigate anything, and I know that there are certain things that you can't really talk about. But what I do want to ask is if there are certain things that you want to share or what you want the public to know with respect to, everything that's been talked about with Flutterwave over the past year and a half.
We had a very long year last year as an organization. And for me personally, I appreciate the chance to talk about this. I'm not sure I've ever spoken about this before in any forum. So this is the first time I'm talking about this. I think for me and for most of the waivers, that's Flutterwave, my Flutterwave colleagues, it's really just learning that as a company grows, we're going to face so many scrutiny. We have to obviously ensure that we prioritize what is important to be prioritized. And I think for me, it's really just knowing the stakeholders that we have, which obviously the biggest are our customers, both enterprise, retail, SMB customers, the amazing people that work in Flutterwave who put in the effort day in, day out to ensure that the company keeps running. Our amazing partners who are somewhat required to help us to grow and scale, and obviously our investors, our board, all over Africa and globally as well, right? For me, the biggest thing for last year was, if I'm speaking particularly on maybe Kenya, for example, is that we were cleared. We were cleared of any wrongdoing in Kenya, which is a big deal for us, for me personally, for the company, for my team, and for our customers as well, right? And that is going to help us to focus on our goal of being the best payment infrastructure for customers on the continent, and making sure that, obviously we continue to serve our clients, and enhance the ecosystem as we should. While it's been a long year for us, it's also been a year where we had to rebuild so many things in the firm, right? We had to rebuild how we communicate. We had to rebuild what we are perceived to prioritize. We have to understand that sometimes perception, while it's not reality, to some people might look like reality. And obviously, when you don't tell your story yourself, right? People get to run with any narrative they see out there to tell your story on your behalf. So I think we have to come out of our share as a company. We've always thought about, our job is to build technology infrastructure, stay in our lane, do our thing, keep it moving. But it's just not that. We also need to tell our story as we're building and staying in our lane, right? So a lot that we've learned as a company, as a team, and we're still learning as well. But the biggest one for me is we're learning our customers, and we're focusing on serving them at a scale that nobody would imagine possible in the ecosystem, right? Which you must have seen in recent times, things that we've done. The new Send app that we just relaunched, Tuition that we just built, our Microsoft partnership, which I will probably talk about later in this conversation. But the goal really is we're learning, we're growing, we're evolving. We face scrutiny. We're prioritizing transparency, integrity as a company. And for us, it's just really, we're playing the long game, right? We're here for the long term as a company. We want to be here for a long time. We want to be here. We want to be the story of a company that started from zero and became something in Africa. That's our story. We started from zero, and we've had to restart from zero. But what is important here is that we're still here and we're thriving, which is very interesting. Yeah.
There's this narrative that we hear a lot about in the ecosystem about needing to be protective of the ecosystem and maybe trying not to share too much bad news because it's going to scare away foreign investors. And I'm wondering if things like that ever went through your head, or what you think about this idea of being transparent and sharing lessons, and the role that you have and Flutterwave has in sharing lessons for the benefit of the ecosystem so that the ecosystem can grow and thrive and prosper. How do you think about that?
There are different perspectives to every conversation, right? But I now believe in the fact that your story needs to be told. Our story needs to be told by ourselves. We have to take the lead in telling our story. When there's vacuum, people will obviously make variety of assumptions because obviously they're trying to um, invent or imagine a story that might not be there. And that's I think my job as the leader here and our job as a team in Flutterwave is to ensure that we tell our story the right way. Because now we understand that hey, they will write those wrong stories anyway. They will put us out there anyway. So why don't we just tell our story ourselves? Why don't we go out there and do what we have to do, right? And I think that is what is important here. Learning that, understanding that, being able to just be very open and transparent. Obviously, not every story can be told immediately. Some would require, obviously, ensuring that every stakeholder involved is aligned. But I think on the long run, it does serve the ecosystem if we are able to tell our stories with all the facts at hand. Yes.
Yeah, and telling stories about both the good and the bad, right? I know that the telling bad stories is always painful, but you guys have a lot of good stories to tell as well, right? And I think inside of everything that's happened, you guys have still grown considerably. I know you say technology reach in 34 countries, a number of different products that have extended far and wide beyond your core products. You mentioned just relaunching the remittance product, Send app, partnerships with Microsoft and different things like that. So can you talk a little bit more just about, from a business perspective, how you've approached this question of growth and expansion, in particular from a product perspective?
When we're starting Flutterwave, a major core thesis has always been about, making Africa feel like a country, right? It's not a country. That when it comes to let's make it feel like one of Flutterwave. And we invested a lot in that philosophy because we believe so much in the fact that payments should be simple in Africa. Payments is extremely broken in Africa, but it can be simple in Africa, right? And that obviously meant a lot of expansion that people did not even imagine possible. We're the largest payment network today in Africa. We have the most licenses in Africa today. We have the most reach in Africa today, right? But imagine what we require to do that, right? It's a lot of work, a lot of expansion, infrastructure initiative, playbooks built, tried, tested, we used, discarded if it doesn't work. So many of that was done, right? And I think we've learned both the good and the hard way that, that thesis makes sense. But that said, we have always followed our customers' journey, right? I talk a lot about one of our customers is Uber, which of course Uber has been a customer that's defined our growth as a firm. We helped Uber to scale across Africa, and we followed them into every market that we're going to go into. So our expansion and growth story can be linked to our customer requirements, and it can also be linked to our philosophy about making payments simple across Africa, and simplifying payments for endless possibilities. So for us as a company, it's really just about how do we make sure our customers can scale on our platform, right? How do we make sure our customers can go to a new country in Africa? And all they have to do is just flip, a switch, literally, on our dashboard, and they can just go live in that new market, right? So our growth has been customer defined. Our expansion is always customer driven. Where does customer want us to be? We listen to customers a lot in Flutterwave. Extremely. We have an extreme customer obsession in Flutterwave when it comes to what our customer wants and how we deliver to the customer.
So how have you managed it, though? I mean, obviously the goal is to make expansion seamless for customers like Uber, but inside of that is a lot of hard work. And, I think that there's this perception as well that fintech expansion is very hard because you're dealing with regulation on a country by country basis. You're dealing with currency, cross currency, all of that kind of stuff. So can you talk a little bit about how Flutterwave has approached these particular obstacles to expansion and scale?
It's been hard. Speaking very frankly, it's been really hard. When you attempt to build payments infrastructure across 30 countries, 30 different central bank licenses to apply for, 30 different requirements of compliance to adhere to. We're one of the most complex corporates in Nigeria, in Africa today, because of one big reason. We have a board in every country, a board in Nigeria, a board in multiple market, a board globally as well. Regulatory requirements to fulfill across board. I think one thing that we've learned is, following the customer's path is very important, right? Ensuring that you build the required resilience to go through with that objective is even more important, right? Because you get obstacles. Like, every time I was in Kenya, if we're not in Kenya, we won't have that problem in Kenya, for example, right? Just imagine having to deal with that kind of issue in 30 countries try at the same time, right? It's a lot of work, right? But I think we are giving the only company in Africa that's navigated Africa licensing like we've done, right? To be able to do it at that scale and get it done properly as well, right? Till today, if you get an Uber in Cairo, in Egypt, and into Uber in Johannesburg, Uber in Lagos, Nigeria, Uber, it's a Flutterwave infrastructure, right? If you and that is so important because we've been able to build that technology to scale it that way. But what is more important here is we've also been able to build the regulatory rails to be able to scale that as well across all the market that we're operating in.
And I know that your expansion and growth has been customer led and customer defined. Do you think that you've grown at an appropriate pace? I think that there's this question about what does fast growth look like in Africa in light of a lot of these regulatory challenges in particular. Should you have grown as fast as you have, or is it now that maybe to develop this resiliency and to build a foundation means like slower growth than perhaps some investors would expect out of these sorts of markets? How do you think about that growth question?
I think that question depends on the industry you're in, right? And the market that you're in. It's a scale game in payment, right? You have to land grab dryly. If you don't land grab in payment, it's hard for you to compete at the scale you want to compete in, right? If I have a customer who wants to collect payment in 20 countries and you only do 2 for them, they will find another player who can do 20 and you've lost the 2 that you have, right? So it's a defensive strategy, right? To defend your turf, you have to scale, right? That's one thing that we have to do. We have to defend our turf by scaling. So it's not like we're trying to grow too fast. We're trying to defend our business. Obviously, some markets are more important than some markets. Some markets require a lot of work. Some are more friendly than others, right? Some markets are obviously extremely volatile, right? As we've seen in our story, right? We've been able to obviously learn the market as we grew, and we've been able to invest in making sure that all the infrastructure required to scale that market, we're putting it in place, right? To scale at a growth rate that is required for our business, and to defend the little market that you said that you have, you really have to scale the business. There's no other way to grow that beyond that approach. Yeah.
Yeah. And in these markets with the regulatory complexity and the cross-border complexity and the sort of fraud complexity, there's, I guess, inevitably going to be challenges and speed bumps along the way when you grow as you need to in order to defend your turf, as you just said. It's inevitable. Do you think some of these challenges and speed bumps in the markets in question?
I think part of the ecosystem growth as well is to understand that there's level of growth you get to. I mean, it's like 0.5% fraud, right? Fraud attempts or whatever in your business. 0.05% fraud is okay, by any payment standard in the world, right? But that said, 0.05% of $20 billion is not the same as of $1 million, right? Right. So that is the scale. So sometimes when someone says, oh, there is a fraud of XYZ on that platform, right? The question is, what's the percentage of that fraud to the TP being processed, right? That context is required. So sometimes people don't communicate that way. I don't understand that even on the global platforms, right? From Block to anybody else, right? There's fraud happening there every day, right? And that is just the thing about payments, right? There's no way there won't be fraud in payments, right? The question is that, are you doing the right thing to make sure that you have all the systems in place? Are you stopping the fraud? Some could be even attempted fraud, maybe not real fraud, right? But you're going to have it in your system. questions are, have you built the right monitoring infrastructure in your platform? Do you have the right people, the right tooling, the right the right technology to get it done at scale? That's the question, right? I think the industry needs to grow, needs to scale and grow and learn that, if you know how much fraud happens in, for example, US ACH fraud, right? It's crazy, or fraud attempt as well. But the percentage of the fraud or the volume being processed might be negligible, right? But that said, and that's just the way it works. And I think part of what we need to do as an ecosystem is to share more information, what can be shared, so people can understand that, hey, it's relative, right? It's not an absolute figure. It's not like, oh, if this is what it is and that's it. No, it's actually relative to your TPV, to your model, to your processing, to your payment type as well, right? And not all fraud are lost. Some are just fraud because it happened. It doesn't mean that you lost the money, right? There are two different things there. So I think loss ratio, fraud, attempted fraud, surveillance fraud, they are all different things that are used at the same time. People have no idea what they're talking about sometimes because they haven't gone deep into that data. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I like that. One thing that I like to talk a lot about is that some of these problems that people think are specific or unique to African markets or African startups are definitely not unique to just African markets and African startups. Back to this idea about, needing to protect a nascent ecosystem. I'm sure that your investors understand, right, that fraud is an inevitability, just a certain percentage of it. But Flutterwave, you guys have been very successful at fundraising and, telling the Nigeria and the African story to global investors and US-based investors. Over $500 million raised. The most recent Series D last year was a $250 million round. Can you talk a little bit about your experience pitching and selling not only Flutterwave, but this story of Nigeria's growth or of the Africa opportunity to global and Western investors?
It's really about the Africa opportunity and Africa growth story, right? We are a 1 billion people continent, as you all know. Average age 20 to 30, as the numbers say. This is the next billion continent. This is opportunity continent, right? After India, there's another continent that has the mass that we have in Africa beyond here. I think it's really about showing them the opportunity here and the fact that capital can unlock that opportunity if properly deployed, right? That potential is just there, and I think it's very obvious to see. For example, look at remittance numbers into Africa, the World Bank numbers, they are crazy. The growth is outstanding, right? And the opportunity is there for anyone who can build and scale to be able to do it, to be able to do it for the right ROI for the right investors as well. That's the way I see it. Yeah, it's just really about the transformation, the transformative power of technology, right? How the likes of MTN has used that for scale, right? Africa went from no phone to mobile phone, for example. We skipped that evolution, right? It's happening in payment as well. We're skipping the traditional payment rails. We're going straight to digital payments as a continent. And the opportunity is right there, right? We are seeing it across, and we're one of the first to show that opportunity. Safaricom is an example of that. M-Pesa is an example of that. They already see that. MTN Mobile is an example of that. Airtel is an example of that. There's so many stories that you can tell that shows that, yes, this is not just a story. It is real. The opportunity is there, right? The same way where MTN captured the telecom market. In Nigeria, for example, MTN became the market leader, and they showed that the African opportunity is there. So I think we are just building on that same narrative and data that, yes, any investor willing to bet on this opportunity with the right people and the right infrastructure, it's going to be amazing, literally.
I'm always curious the extent to which global investors are interested in a specific company, so they wanted to back you and Flutterwave as opposed to the Africa story, or are those two things inextricably linked? What's your experience been in terms of also you talked about needing to back the right people, so I suppose in that case it's you and Flutterwave, but is there ever like a sort of conversation about why this is the right opportunity to back in Africa versus backing the Africa story in general?
Yeah, I think backing us or anybody that's in Africa is still backing Africa, right? That's one. Right. Two, I also believe that the opportunity here can also be linked to the ambition size, right? What is the size of your ambition? If you're trying to build an infrastructure to do payments across Africa, that is bankable. If you're trying to build for just a niche market in one country, maybe you don't need to raise VC, right? But for me, I think it's one and the same. I guess it's just a matter of what's your ambition size. Do you have the track record to prove you can do this at scale? And do you really want to do that scale? And that's the way it works for me. Yeah.
This episode of The Flip is sponsored by Norskin 22. Norskin 22 is a $200 million growth stage fund, backed by over 30 unicorn founders and advisors who, beyond capital, are committing their time and network to help the fund's portfolio companies grow into unicorns themselves. And throughout this season, we're going to share pertinent lessons and wisdom from members of the Unicorn Board. In today's episode, we're joined by Niklas Adalbert, a co-founder of the Swedish buy now pay later company Klarna, the founder of the Norskin Foundation, and a founding partner of Norskin 22.
I was 23 years old when I started Klarna together with two friends. And we were very lucky. Things went quite well. And the company grew from zero to $2.25 billion during this time. I thought money would make me happy and reach nirvana when I reached my financial goals, but I felt nothing. So instead I decided to quit and instead devote my life and time and money on a foundation called Norskin Foundation. When we started the foundation, we started to do some smaller investments out of the non-profit, and we saw that the demand for capital to impact companies was much greater than we could support. So we went out to the investor market, the LP market, and tried to see if they want to build a fund together with us. But they all said the same thing, that you cannot combine impact and financial return. You have to choose. It turned out that the cases that had the best impact, they were the ones that had a proper business model so that they could scale the impact with the revenue and hire even more people, and by that doing even more revenue. We realized that, hey, it is not a contradiction. You can combine impact and financial return. And a little bit the same thing with our fund in Africa, that when we started looking into this in the beginning, people said that, hey, it's not a great financial return if you invest into Africa. But I think that now when people have a smartphone in their hand and are much more digitalized, I think it's like the best business opportunity in the world. And investors start to see this now. And that's why we're so happy that we're able to get a $200 million fund into investing into Africa.
So just while we're on the topic of investing, I know, especially the past couple of years, you were well noted for your angel investing. I think maybe 25 plus fintechs in Nigeria and across the ecosystem. So can you talk a little bit about why you chose to invest so heavily in the ecosystem, and how are you seeing things now from the investor perspective now that we're in this, so-called market downturn and fintech winter of 2023?
My investment, approach is really about my belief in ecosystem, right? I believe a lot in what I see on ground in Africa. I am seeing operators who are doing amazing products. I'm seeing a lot of Flutterwave ex-employees out there building great, amazing products. From likes of Femi, building a lending infrastructure, vendor, likes of Dami, building a remittance product, remittance product. We have so many Flutterwave alumni who have built amazing companies. I think the first part for me was I wanted to back my team, right? Back then where they work in Flutterwave, back then when they leave Flutterwave. That was where it started from, right? Especially the tech investment. And for me, it's really about seeing amazing folks out there who have great ideas, and they have the courage to also go after those ideas, right? And also, when we were starting, I didn't get that much help, literally, right? We had to fund ourselves at the beginning, right? With family money, with personal money, we all had to invest, bring our network to the table to raise capital for Flutterwave at the beginning. So I think helping, not everybody has that privilege that we had when we were starting Flutterwave. So basically helping other folks to get started is a big deal, because we see the ecosystem. I believe in the potential of African technology. I see what we're building. The best engineers are in Africa. I see it every day. The best product guys are in Africa. I see it every day. So it's really just, putting your money where your mouth is. That's where I see it.
Yeah. I think we hear a lot about ecosystems growing through founders who have exited and reinvesting in the ecosystem or starting or launching funds. And I think for me, as we talked about before, also ecosystems grow by sort of sharing lessons from the founders who came before, and, those lessons sort of allowing this iteration and this growth for the next generation of founders. So how do you think about that? You've been around for a long time, both, on the banking side before and now with Flutterwave and now as an angel investor. Do you feel like the ecosystem is evolving and turning over to the extent that you hope that it should, or is it a bit slow going, given the inherent market challenges?
I'm not able to measure the ecosystem growth, to be very honest. But from what I see, I do think, yes, it is evolving, that's for sure. The rate of fundraising, the rate of scale, building great products, solving problems, they're all evolving massively, right? And that is very good. We need more, obviously, we need more scale, we need more growth, we need more exits in the market. And I think that's where it's supposed to be.
I think thinking, ecosystem wide, you are also noted beyond, I think, your role in the ecosystem for your banking background, right? Before Flutterwave, Access Bank, GT Bank, you had a stint at PayPal. I think there's a really interesting question about the background of entrepreneurs and what makes good founders from a experience perspective. I'm curious to know how you think about your experience at these, more corporate institutions. What have you learned? What were your takeaways? And how, if any way, has it influenced how you've built and led Flutterwave?
I think it varies for every founder, right? I don't think that's what experience I think is great. I don't think that is necessarily what makes a founder a great founder, right? It's really just a function of different experiences across board. I basically, I've had opportunities of working for the best companies in the world, if you ask me, from PayPal to GT Bank to Google to Standard Bank, Stanbic to Access Bank to Sterling Bank. Each of those companies, I learned something. And each of them contributed in a way to where I am today, right? To get me to where I am right now. But that said, every founder's journey is different, right? You can't write out the DNA specifics for how a founder should come. It's different. And everybody's journey contributes in getting to where they're going to be as they grow and scale the business. So I don't think, I've seen founders who drop out from school who are doing pretty well. I've seen founders who have experiences who are not doing well. Founders who are doing really, really well as well. I've seen everything, so it doesn't really matter. Different things shape different experiences, if you ask me.
For you, what ultimately compelled you after all of your experiences with, you said the best companies in the world, what ultimately compelled you to decide to go out on your own and start your own business and to found Flutterwave after, several years working for bigger organizations?
The biggest one was really just seeing that payment is broken in Africa. I recall when I was working for a particular bank, we were trying to help a large corporate get paid. They were going from Nigeria to South Africa, and it was hard to do so. And it wasn't because the bank I worked in couldn't do it. We just lacked the technology infrastructure, the will, the scale to get it done. And part of what we had to basically do was look for ways to solve the problem, but still the customer wasn't satisfied because it wasn't a great solution. And we're constrained by the fact that we're a bank, right? So I saw that there's opportunity for a non-bank player to come in here and partner with banks and build an infrastructure that rides on banking rails, right? But build a layer above that and make it smoother and smoothing all the speed bumps in the banking infrastructure. That's what we've done. So I think that was really solving problems. I wanted to solve problems for corporates in the ecosystem. But that said, I'm very solution oriented. I think of solutions typically, and I'm an engineer, I'm a product guy, been there, done that. So I think all those really helped me in saying, okay, let me just put my skills to work and try this out. And here we are on podcast with Justin.
You guys have obviously come very far from those days, but I think there is still a bit of a narrative that payments are still broken or the problem hasn't been solved, right? And, we're talking every day now about new types of payments rails and crypto and different things like that. How much further do you think we need to go? Or what is the sort of grand big picture vision that, Flutterwave is building towards and your vision for the tech ecosystem in Nigeria and beyond? I guess, does the payments problem ever get solved, or what does the evolution look like there?
That question can be answered in multiple perspectives. If you're a consumer, if we want to send money, right, to anybody, use send by Flutterwave. We've solved that. We haven't covered every country yet. We're going to get there. But the major ones have been covered. Nigeria is covered, Kenya is covered, South Africa is covered, Rwanda is covered, UK, US, Europe is covered. You can send money from there to Africa, and it works. Like literally, it works. You don't have to worry about the technology behind it. Just a simple product. Go in there, you have a card, you've got an account in a bank in UK, Europe, in South Africa, wherever you are want to send money, it works. In a way, we've solved it for consumers, for the market that we are in. For SMBs, similarly as well. If you are following for business, there's really nowhere you can't send money to or get paid from, right? Literally, if you're following for business, right? I think what we have to do right is a lot of market education, right? Because people are not even aware that they don't need to have that problem. They think that problem is there because they imagine, okay, I have to use this, use that. Behind the scene, we'll get it work. If we have to get on a plane and go take that money there for you, we'll make it happen. But the point is, it's not like 100% solved yet, to be very honest, right? But to the extent where we're allowed to do by regulation, right? It is definitely done. Yeah.
So then what does the near-term vision look like? Does it look like new products, or does it look like new countries, or a combination of both?
It's really about combination of both, and more market education. You see a lot of what's out there now compared to before, because we want people to know that. I mean, I see online every day, oh, I can't send money, it's not working. I'm like, have you tried send my Flutterwave? Oh, you haven't. That's why okay, try it. I mean, beyond, you can try so many other products that they all work. But people are not even aware they work. Now, people are not even aware as well how to navigate the complexities in those areas as well. So I think a lot of education is required from us. For the future is really just, we want to still be that payment bridge for Africa, connect everywhere together, enable consumers, SMBs, and enterprises to pay and get paid in Africa. And I think for the tech ecosystem at large, it's really about how we contribute our quota to build a connected and vibrant ecosystem. I think that's very important. And also basically keep on innovating our way out of poverty in Africa, basically, right? I think that's, Africa needs to come true for Africa. I believe firmly in that. And I will end up by saying, I believe very strongly in three major pillars for Africa, that if we can do that properly, that can unleash the next wave of innovation in Africa, which is basically payments, commerce, and logistics. If those three are solved, and we are working on the payment side of things, obviously, if the main three are solved, the next Amazon will be born in Africa in the next 10 years for sure.
I think maybe we talked about payments is a hard problem to solve, but payments is maybe the easiest of those three pillars.
Exactly.
You're definitely looked up to by a lot of, Nigerian and African founders in the ecosystem. And, the intent of this series, as I said, I think is to, try and share lessons from those who are the most experienced founders and operators across the continent. So I'm wondering if there are any other lessons that you like to share, a piece of advice, or, even as an investor, mistakes that you're seeing young founders make, any sorts of, experiences that you hope to share for the betterment and the evolution of the ecosystem across the continent?
I would say stay resilient, be very adaptive, right? One thing I think I learned from YC is make what customers want, right? So I will evolve that to be, put your customers at the center of everything that you're doing. That's very important. And it's a long, hard road, right? When I was starting, someone told me it was a 10-year journey. I was like, nah, 10 years, no way. 8 years, 7 going on 8. So they're right, it's a 10-year journey. That said, the journey is as important as destination, right? Sometimes we optimize for, that exit, that end goal. But I think if you get there, and by the time you're there, you are ragged, you are not in any way, shape, or form to actually enjoy that value, then what's the point? So I think the journey is as equally as important as the destination as well, right? And also, it's just a job. That's important for you to remember. It's just a job.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, right, they feel that they're solving really important problems in the context of, the development of the continent, right? So there is a bit of weightiness to it, though. So maybe what you're saying is it doesn't have to be as heavy as some people feel sometimes when it comes to solving these big problems.
In reality, it's heavy because a founder's life, it's a roller coaster, right? One day you are you're on top of the world. The next day you are just like trying to find air to breathe, right? Under the carbon monoxide, right? That's where life works. So, but that said, again, the journey is as simple as destination. Just have fun. And it's a job. Yeah, it's just a job. The only thing I want to mention is just how very, very inspiring I am of my team. The Flutterwave team, oh my gosh, the best people in the world, right? You know, ride or die folks, literally. I've been lucky to work with the best people in this ecosystem, basically, both previously and currently. But I think the people are just amazing. People that have been can be here, come rain, come sunshine. Great folks. So I think Flutterwave today is built on the back of all of us, literally, right? It's not more a GB thing or whatever. It's actually it's a village built Flutterwave and still building it.